So I'm Al Gresch, Vice President of HTM Consulting for Phoenix Data Systems. I worked most of my career at a 15-hospital system in the Midwest, running a large in-house HTM department. Did literally every thing, all the modalities in-house at a 4% cost of service ratio and a 4.6 customer satisfaction rating. So we were pretty successful. And then I worked for another health system in running their capital supply chain. And after leaving there, I went to work for a couple of software companies, and now I'm with Phoenix. So David?
Hi, I'm Dave Scott. I work at UCHealth. That's University of Colorado Health. So I know a lot of people say Connecticut or Cincinnati or somewhere else, but I'm a senior tech there. And the idea for this presentation came from, I went to a presentation in Las Vegas. It was on standards, and it was by Heidi Horn and Kurt Fink. And they were talking about the standards development and all the stuff coming up. And I started thinking, what is software, like our CMMS going to be like in 2035? Or just 10 years from now, because that's kind of what their idea of their standards were, the 10 years of standards development. So I thought I was really smart, and I texted Al and I said, hey Al, you want to do a presentation with me at upcoming Expo? And I just sent him the title. I just said CMMS 2035. He's like, I'm in, let me know, Dave. Let's get together. So I thought I was really smart, and I wrote down all the stuff, like this is all the stuff that I think is gonna be going on with all the CMMS. And Al emailed me back, Dave, all this already exists. And so my question back to Al was, well, why isn't anyone using it? So I'm going to turn it over to Al, and he's going to talk about all the stuff that we're using now, and then we'll get into what we think is coming in the future.
Yeah, it was an interesting evolution of this presentation, because when I did get Dave's email, and I thought, well, we could do all this today. I wondered how many other people were in the same boat, that they weren't happy with their current system and were looking for something else. And yet, in my history working for CMMS companies, typically people are only using about 30% of what's capable. So we kind of pivoted as to how we were going to present this, and I want to take the first majority part of this to present what exists today. And as I go through that, I'm going to ask for a show of hands how many people are actually using that functionality. And then we'll get into where we think things are going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, and then where things are going to be when we get to 2035. Make sense? All right. So I always like to start out with the why. We all know that people are retiring. A lot of people are retiring from the industry. We aren't having as many people come into the field to fill those roles, and so we must get more efficient at what we're doing. We must streamline processes. We must get more out of the people that we have, out of necessity. I did a presentation with Rob Bundick yesterday on healthcare finance, and in that we talked about one of the metrics that I incorporated, which was annual device hours per technician. The industry average is 1,001. Think about that in terms of an FTE being 2080. That's not a lot of time, right, for people to do what you're actually paying them to do. And so we got really, really aggressive about finding, identifying those things that were non-device related and minimizing that time as much as possible. We brought ours up to 1,550 annual device hours per technician, and Rob currently following that same process in his organization is about that same spot. I'll give a lot of credit to UConn right here, still cranking out students. Dave was just mentioning that a lot of them are female, which is, I think, is good for the industry. The College of Biomedical Equipment Technology that I'm involved with is doing a good job of trying to fill that hole as well. But clearly, a lot of schools have closed in the last 5 to 10 years, and we just aren't getting the number of people that we had at one time. So I'm just gonna, well, Dave, if you want to just
Sure.
do a survey here.
Sure. How many of you are fully staffed currently? Pretty good, pretty good. What about, do you have people that are getting close to retirement or, yeah, the great resignation they're calling it? If you look at the average age in BioMET, I think it's what, 49 years old or so. So there's getting to be fewer and fewer of us, and it seems like, from what I see here, it seems very encouraging. I see a lot of young people and a lot of young people getting into the profession, but I don't think that's like nationally as much from what I've seen. So it seems like we have some work to do. And Alan, I think part of the work can be done through your CMMS.
One thing I'd like to touch on too, it was interesting when I was very aggressive and focused on becoming more efficient. I had technicians say, "Well, I know why you're doing this, because you're trying to get rid of us. You're trying to get rid of some of us." And I was like, oh my God, do you have any idea how many opportunities there are for us to take on additional responsibilities and have a greater impact on our organization that we don't have the bandwidth to do? So trust me, I'm not getting rid of anybody. You know, if we get more efficient and gain back more time, you know, we'll do that. We'll take on more responsibilities. Just out of curiosity, because this drives me absolutely crazy, how many people currently implement an AEM program?
Well, that's pretty good.
Okay, pretty good, but not everybody. Every hand should go up, okay, because that is extremely low-hanging fruit. I do a regulatory compliance class for Amy, and there's another session coming up in December, so shameless plug for that, but it's in two parts. The first part is just overall regulatory compliance. The second part is on AEM, and it's not rocket science, folks. There's no reason why you shouldn't have an AEM implemented. So anyway.
I always joke with y'all that I raise my hand halfway, not all the way up.
Okay. So how do you deal with the lack of qualified staff? You do it like in any industry, you do it through efficiency and automation. The path that I followed was, and again, our CMMS was an important component of this, is you document everything that you do. How many people have set a threshold for their staff on how many hours they should document every day? Okay, I always tell people, don't ever do that. You will get that number, okay, but it won't mean anything. What I always told my people was, document everything you do it accurately and do it honestly. And if I find that you have additional time available, I'll find stuff for you to do, right? And we'll take on more things, right? So I know it's a balance when you're reporting up to your executive leadership, your productivity numbers, right? But there are better ways to go about doing that. So again, you document everything that you're doing, you do it accurately and honestly. And then what you do is you aggregate that work by work type. Again, I talked about device hours versus non-device hours. And then when you have everything documented accurately, you determine what good looks like. I'm sure every single one of us has rock stars on our teams that you can kind of hold up as a benchmark, right? As far as, you know, what good should look like. And through collecting all of this data and aggregating it, you should have a pretty good idea of what that mean should be. And then I always tell people that I have never used data as a tool to beat people up. Never. It's an indicator, right? So if I have somebody that falls outside of the mean for instance, on performing PM on a particular device, and he comes in at 30% under that mean, okay, is he skipping steps that he shouldn't be skipping? Maybe. Or could it be that he learned some tricks through his previous travels that saving him time? And if that's true, shouldn't I have everybody doing that, right? Similarly, if he's 30% higher, Okay, maybe he's screwing around, you know, maybe. Or it could be that he's learned that if I do these additional steps, I'll reduce my corrective maintenance. And if that's true, don't I want everybody doing that, right? So the data is key, and if you collect the data accurately, and again, you can determine what good looks like, then you can identify waste and eliminate that waste, okay? And you're gonna gain back quite a bit of time. But again, your CMMS is gonna be key to that. I have this slide in every single presentation I do because data integrity is such a key. If you don't, you know, there's that statement that you can't improve what you can't measure. You can't measure anything and benchmark if you don't have good data. We had a very, this dates back probably 20 years now, we had a very detailed data integrity policy that we implemented and trained our technicians on. And we had a statement in that policy that said failure to comply with this policy will result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. So we sent a message to our teams that we take this very seriously. We have to, because we want to be as good as we can possibly be. We can't be that without good data, okay?
What do you do from what, you know, your daytime job now? What is your suggestion to people who are in that situation?
Sure. So the question was, what do you do if you go in the system and you find that the data is subpar, shall we say? You know, what I did is I sort of drew a line in the sand and said, okay, from this point forward, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to approach things. When you talk about data integrity, often people go to things like alignment of manufacturer model and device category within your inventory, right? And that's absolutely important. Because if you want to run reports on anything that you're going to deliver to your executive leadership, if it's inaccurate, you've just flushed your credibility, right? You can't have that. You can't have that. At the risk of being an advertisement, you know, we have superior analytics that will do data cleanups, and we get you about 80% of clean data on that point. But it isn't just about that. It's not just about your inventory. It's also creating a consistent and defined set of CMMS codes. You know, Rich is part of a group that got together, and I'll touch on that a little bit, of it was called the CMMS Collaborative, where major CMMS companies got together and started to develop code standards with definitions, okay? And that's where we started. I had 150 codes in my CMMS at one time, and you know, I know how that happens over time. You have a need for, you know, you have a special project going on, you create a code that you want to track some time. Nobody ever cleans that up again. So, you know, I had this huge list of codes, and what it created was the likelihood that I could have 20 different technicians doing the exact same work and documenting it 20 different ways. So how can I ever benchmark anything or report on anything? You can't. And so we, again, drew a line in the sand, Ben, and created a finite list of codes. For each request code, there was a finite set of acceptable result and fault codes, okay? And we trained our technicians on what those were and how to use them, okay? So there are currently 2 white papers. One was on fault codes, and the other, and I have a slide on that,
Yeah,
but one was on fault codes and one was on work order types or request codes. Okay, there's still work to be done there, and I'm still pushing Amy, who sponsored those first 2, to continue that work, because it's important work.
Al, as I look around the room, I went to the TN20 breakfast the other day, and this was a big discussion. It seemed like maybe half of the discussion was, and Ben was in there too, was on data integrity. And I don't know that we ever got to an answer, but it's something that's really a big topic in our profession.
Yeah. So just a brief overview. For the longest time, UMDNS was the standard. You got a question back there from Mike?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is white papers done, CMMS organizations came together, put together some great information. The problem is standard.
Yep. Yep.
It is. It is. Yep.
Until people adopt it, it's not really a standard.
Right, and then, but until that happens, Mike, my recommendation is to do the work to pare down what you have into a finite list of codes that make sense, adopt them, and enforce them. Okay. Like I said, there's still a lot of work to be done, but you know, each one of these conferences that we go to, there's a higher level of adoption of people that have, right? So as long as we continue to move forward, we're on a path. So going back to this, I know how familiar you guys are with the FDA initiatives. Like I said, for the longest time, UMDNS from ECRI was the standard for nomenclature. And then FDA came out with unique device identifier, global medical device nomenclature, and good ID. And it's sort of based on the automobile industry with a VIN number. There's a lot of information contained in that. It's typically on a barcode that you can scan and get all of that information. And it includes two components: device identifier, and then the product identifier. So it has a lot of good information contained in it. And, you know, people look to adopt different things, and they hold off on doing anything until they make a decision about what they want to do. Like they're waiting for perfection. My recommendation on this is pick one and go with it. Once you have your data standardized, if you decide you want to switch to something else, doing that mapping becomes very, very easy. Okay, make sense?
I feel like this is a good one to get everybody on the same page.
Right. So again, going back to the work that the CMMS Collaborative done, you know, let's talk about what exists today. So standardized codes, there is some of that does exist today that you can adopt. And like I said, if you choose not to adopt what was in here, there's still work that you can do today, right? Not wait until 2035 for a CMMS to solve all of these issues. That ability exists today. Having rigid documentation standards. You don't need somebody to create something before you can do that. You can create that yourself. Now, I will say that a CMMS can help you with that. The more they can do like drop downs and point you to your required standards, the better, right? Because it eliminates some of that documentation outside of what your standards are. Automations. I'm going to run through a list of different automations, but your CMMS ought to support automation. So if you think about anything that goes on within your department, there are certain workflows that happen, right? And it's sort of like if this, then this. And for the most part, a lot of those things are manual. Technicians have to spend time doing those then that activities, right? If there's a way for your CMMS to automate that, and that exists today, right, then you can automate things. So for instance, one of the things I'll talk about is if a PM fails, what happens? Okay, you close out the PM as a PM failed, you generate a corrective maintenance work order. Well, your system should be able to do that automatically, right? And it saves time. And it's a small thing, but you know, we have some customers that have over 100 automations, and it saves technician time like you would not believe. Integrations and interfaces, enterprise resource planning, so your ERP system, ServiceNow, your CMDB, cybersecurity, network monitoring tools, RFID and RTLS. We talked about that, Ben, and the time that can save. ADT, admission, discharge, transfer, recalls, time resource platforms, building automation system, which is more on the facilities engineering side of things, but still a valuable tool to automate. and then automated test equipment. So David's going to talk a little bit about that and the efficiencies that can be gained there. So again, these are all integration opportunities that exist today. Purchasing, whether you use Lawson or PeopleSoft or whatever, there are ways to automate that. Rather than having to go into 2 different systems to order parts, there ought to be a mechanism for you to have a bidirectional integration with that system so that things retain the accuracy that they need to. Test devices.
That's kind of the start of your cost of service ratio, right? Having the right price in there.
Test devices, RTLS. I'll just tell you that no one is ever going to approve buying an RTLS system just for the purpose of HTM being able to find equipment. They're just not going to do that. That's a side benefit, certainly, but where you really gain the cost savings and efficiency is to know where your stuff is, because and creating a process around that, so your nursing staff has the equipment that they need when they need it. That's why you implement that. And a side benefit, of course, is that that you're going to know where stuff is. Okay, and that exists today. Those integrations exist today. PartSource has an integration with just about every CMMS company out there, right? Automating that, and then ServiceNow or a CMDB. So let's go through some of those automations that I alluded to earlier. Auto assignments. I had a system in place where every single device in my inventory had a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary technician assigned to it. So I didn't have to waste a manager or supervisor's time doing work assignments. I had people who had competency on that particular modality, and based on the modality and the geography that it was in, or the department that was in, it was this person, and it went to them consistently. I know that some people shy away from that type of system, but 2 things happen. Number 1, it saves time. Number 2, you have a much greater level of ownership. The technicians, that's their department, and they take very strong ownership of it. So we saw a lot of benefits from that. Failed PM, I alluded to that earlier. What happens when a PM fails? Okay, close out the work order. This PM failed. You started a corrective maintenance work order. You should be able to do that automatically. Incoming inspection. When you get a big fleet of equipment that's coming in, do you have to manually create a record for every one of those things, or do you have the ability to do mass import of that data from a spreadsheet to begin that record in an automated fashion, right? Think about how much time that would save you. That exists today. Could not locate. Okay, most of us have rules around equipment that you're unable to locate, right? And what happens if in however many successive PM schedules you can't find that thing? You archive that device, right? Well, can that happen automatically? Yes, it can. You can implement these automations to do that and save yourself some time. Removed from service and retired. When you do that, your system ought to have the ability to close out all open work associated with that, right? Transfer of work order. And this is a thing where most, if not all, CMMSs have an integration to ServiceNow, right? Or if you're using the same system between facilities engineering and HTM, you have an easy ability to transfer those work orders and not lose any information. Again, that exists today. Equipment reactivation. So, okay, this thing was unable to locate for 2 cycles, or maybe 3 cycles. You archived it, but then somebody finds it again. Okay, you have the ability then to automate that process and reactivate that device and maintain all of the history on it and do that automatically. Doing mass edits, and this is something I think that happens recalls, right? And having the ability to automate that process and do those updates on a mass level rather than having to touch every single work order that exists today. So I talked about parts purchasing and whatever ERP you're using. So the time spent ordering parts, services can be substantial, and errors add costs and delays and impacts the accuracy of your data and your equipment service costs, right? An automated process can increase life cycle and cost accuracy. How many people today in this room have an integration with their ERP? 1, 2, 3?
For parts.
Okay, so not a lot, but again, that exists today, and something you should be talking about and looking to pursue. I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but this is just each one of these has a process flow to show, you know, where's the information generated from, where does it go to, is it bi-directional, does information go out and then come back, right? And as you're creating these integrations, it's something that you should map out. What information do I need to send? What information do I need back? ServiceNow. Share data between your CMMS and ServiceNow increases efficiency and eliminates manual processes, reduces errors. And today there's blurred lines between IT and HTM, right? There has to be those kinds of integrations. And you now have the ability to transfer information back and forth from a CMDB management perspective. This is particularly important during a cyber attack, right? Having all of that network information connected and integrated. Again, that I don't know of too many CMMSs that don't have an integration to ServiceNow, right? Myself, going back to my past, I sat down with my IT leadership and we worked out process flows and identified who should take first call on this thing based on what the issue is, right? And so, for instance, on a CT, if the workstation, there was a problem with the workstation, and you know, is the problem on the modality side or on the network side? If it's on the modality side, then we should take it. If it's on the network or workstation side, it should be them. But what we came to an agreement on is worst case scenario, both a representative from both of our teams are standing in front of that device to solve the problem. We don't have this finger pointing and you know, lobbing the ball back and forth across the net. Cybersecurity. Again, you can identify connected devices, the risks inherited with those devices, and the risks due to age operating systems. You know, this is the kind of thing where, and we all know in a session I was in that I led yesterday, there were a good number of people that had experienced a cyber attack, okay? And time equals money when it comes to this. And increased time equates to increased risk. So the faster you can identify affected devices and get them remediated, the better it is for you, the better it is for your organization. Again, that exists today. So how many people have integrations with a cybersecurity system? A few of you, okay? Something that you should be driving toward.
See, I'm not the only one, Al. When I sit in that list, I'm like, why doesn't everyone do this?
Yeah. RFID RTLS gives you the ability to know what you have and where it is. I was talking to Rob yesterday about the fact that there's continued perception of shortage, and so you know, the people are pressuring, executives are pressuring supply chain to buy more infusion pumps when they've got 43% of their fleet sitting around ready to go, but people don't know where they are, right? So again, you overcome that perception And Rob provides regular reports to his leadership about utilization and where they know where things are and what's being used and what's not being used. So that really helps with that. So you decrease your stock of inventory. You feed availability, so the nurses do get what they need when they need it, and it increases trust between the people that provide that technology and the people using the technology. How many people currently have an integration to their an RTLS system? Okay, again, a few people. This one surprises me. Admissions, discharge, transfers. In the company I worked for before, we had an integration to an ADT system, but it was only used for moving equipment and identifying when the room was open so that this equipment distribution could go get that equipment and bring it back for cleaning. And as Dave and I were talking, he had a situation where, he had a room that was, he couldn't access. Why couldn't we use that same integration to identify when a room becomes available so that you can access whatever equipment is in there?
And you know what equipment's in there by your RTLS,
right,
or your inventory, and you know when that room's available through the CMMS integrating with your ADT.
Yeah. So how many people have an integration to an ADT system? One person. Okay.
I feel like ADT is kind of like housekeeping, uses it a lot, right?
But again, that information and that integration exists.
Yeah.
Why not leverage
exactly.
it to help your technicians save time in identifying when things become available? Okay. Recalls. How many people have integration to a recall system, either Rasmus or ECRI? Okay. Here again, having the ability to automate that process, identifying what systems what devices are effective, and then making those assignments in an automated fashion and providing information back to the manufacturer that those things have been resolved. Ben, you have a question? Mm-hmm.
Just thinking your ADT having cybersecurity and ADT hooked up, where you can say, hey, there could be enough integration where you find where you have both.
Yep.
You're skipping ahead to my slide at the end.
Well, we have a person in our company that does integrations, right? And we don't just build integrations. It's what people will ask for, and they're not free, right? But when you look at the ROI for that and what will I get in return, it's something that you ought to be thinking about outside of just your own little box of in a CMMS and documenting work, right? There's just so many ways that you can increase efficiency and automate things. Time resource, so like Chronos, any number of other time tracking systems, knowing who's available for work distribution. As I said, the way we had it set up in our system was we knew who was available, and if the primary on that particular device was on vacation or working on another system, it would go to the secondary, because we had committed response times that we published with our customers, and we had to make sure that we met or exceeded those committed response times, right? Ben, you were talking about in your session, what's important to your executive leadership, and it's availability, right? So anything that you can do to ensure that stuff gets responded to in as quick a manner as possible and back and available to the end user, the better. Those are the things that your executives care about.
Does anybody use this now? Go to your Chronos and see like which employees are available that day and maybe automatically assign.
Well, you're further ahead than a lot of people, so yeah. Building automation system, I really won't take much time on this, but because again, this is more in the facilities realm. Ben, I'm sure you're familiar with this, and having that integration of, there's sensors on a lot of things that will notify you when something is not where it should be, where temperatures aren't where they should be, pressures aren't where they should be. IoT. I remember I was at an RTLS, the RTLS company that we adopted. We had a user conference with them, and they wanted to know things they could develop going forward. And I was thinking about what are the early indicators of failures in most things, like with imaging equipment, especially heat and vibration, right? So if you had sensors that would tell you when there's an increase in temperature or vibration, you would know when that thing's on a path to failure before it happens, right? We also had temperature and pressure sensors on our cold heads, so that we didn't run the risk of quenching magnets, which could be a very costly and lengthy situation. So there's a lot of ways to do that, and you get more predictive and proactive rather than reactive. And I think that's going to be more and more the thing as we get smarter equipment to be able to consume those notifications of something, of an impending failure. All right, Dave.
Automation. I feel like as a technician, my tools are like my toolbox and my test equipment. I feel like as a manager, your toolbox is your CMMS. That's kind of how you do your job. I do my job with tools and test equipment. So there's automated test equipment stuff. Did anybody go to the last sessions? I was in the Pronk one, and they were talking about the defib tester and so on. So there was that last hour of sessions was almost all on some kind of test equipment demo. So I know Fluke has 1QA, Pronk has Mobilize, and Daytrend has a way to integrate with your CMMS also. And this one is looking at the Pronk Mobilize, and it's a wireless automation via an app that they have that's called the Mobilize app, and all this test equipment ties into it. And then they have the OEM recommended test, and you can step through it, and it gives you pass fail. It gives you all the test equipment you used, your test equipment serial number, the calibration date, so on. So if you ever get like records questioned, you can always pull up like a very detailed document of this test equipment and the record of that testing of that piece of equipment. So this is a comparison from a manual test versus an automated test equipment test. And at the very bottom, you can see, well, you probably can't see it in red. It says Mobilize time does not include tech admin time to close work order, currently 4 to 6 minutes. It might even be less than that now, depending on your CMMS. This is automated depending on CMMS. And those companies have different ways you can import the data from that test equipment, and you can actually set it up so you can do reports or scan it, look for certain abnormalities, or you can just attach it as a PDF, which is not as searchable as that other data. But this shows how much time was saved, and how we were saying there's more people retiring, more people leaving. How do you do more with less? This is one of the big ones that can really help out in that.
Yeah, a year or so ago, I did a time motion study with one of our customers. Actually, a couple of different ones, one with Pronk and one with 1QA. And the 1QA had similar results to this. I'll tell you that when I was a department manager, I was never a big fan of automated test equipment. I thought, well, guys ought to know how to use the test equipment we have and do what they need to do. But we also weren't faced with the staffing shortages that we're faced with today, where every minute matters, right? And if you look at the percent time saved on just these two different devices, 45% on one and 67% time saved on another. And when you add to that the savings in documentation time, it's immense, right?
And how many you have per year to do?
Right.
It adds up fast.
Do we have a question?
Does someone have a question?
No.
Oh,
okay.
And also the error, that like there's less error, because I'm not maybe the best person typing stuff, and I might fat finger something where this has it automatically going in there based off of the test equipment. So
So-
it's more accurate.
Right. So how many people today have an integration to automated test equipment with their CMMS? Anybody? Nobody.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. See,
Again,
it's
opportunity.
not just me, my wish list.
Okay, so let's talk briefly about what's available tomorrow. We showed the CMMS collaborative white papers. Mike brought up the question that the issue is with adoption, and I think in the next 3 to 5 years there will be a much greater standardization of nomenclature, CMMS codes, processes, and procedures. And not only will it help you in managing your department, I think it will help the industry and our ability to benchmark across the industry. That's been the challenge up to this point for the last 30, 40 years, where we can't agree on how we document things and what we're going to call things. And until that happens, you talked, Bensing was on the panel talking about right to repair. If we can pull together all of this stuff and be able to provide meaningful data to support what it is that we do and that defend ourselves with that data, things aren't going to change all that much. So
that's when we become the driver instead of the passenger.
Right. AEM automation. This is something that to some extent it exists today, but I think in the next 3 to 5 years you're going to see much more automation within your CMMS. In the class that I do, I always talk about the fact that whoever your surveying entity is, whether it's DNV or Joint Commission, they look for 3 things. The first is, what criteria did you use to determine that thing was eligible for an AEM? Okay, that's what they want to see. And they don't dictate to you what that criteria is, right? And there are different methodologies to go about doing that. Bensing has written up a lot of things on evidence-based maintenance, and those are things that you can implement and use. But your CMMS can hold that information about what your criteria is and whether or not, given your failure rates for that particular device, meets that criteria. Okay, and then you can easily show the surveyor. The second thing that they look for is what in your inventory is on an AEM program. You ought to be able to identify very quickly and easily that information and present a report to them to show them, right? The third thing that they look for, and here's where the greatest level of automation can be, is they want to know what mechanism you have in place to determine whether or not you made the right decision. Okay, so you made the decision based on failure rates. Over time, once you made that decision, did your failure rates increase? And if they did, well, then maybe that wasn't the best decision. So there should be within your CMMS a mechanism to monitor that automatically and notify you that your failure rates have gone up. And not to say that you would just like pull that thing off AEM, but you would look at it to see, did I make the right decision? Do I need to move it back, or is there something else going on, right? VR training, invert, if anybody's been to that booth here, that's something that I think in the next 3 to 5 years will become more prevalent and could be incorporated or should be incorporated into your CMMS. So based on the inventory that you have, again, dealing with the fact that you're going to have less experienced technicians because your more experienced technicians are retiring. You're going to need help for them, okay? Predictive maintenance equipment integrations based on smarter equipment. Ben, we talked about those infusion pumps that have the built-in RTLS and can provide you notifications. No PM required, right? Because the information and the technology is built into that device to notify you when it needs service, right?
We got about 5 minutes out.
Okay.
Before questions.
Yeah, we're about to the end here. So OEM CMMS integrations, getting electronic field service reports. Some of that exists today. We've been working with a couple of OEM vendors on that.
It'd be
And
nice
then
to do that.
automated staffing analysis. So I showed at my session yesterday this Manning analysis that showed that we presented every year at budget time to show what our net equipment adds were, the associated device hours to support that equipment, and as a result, how many FTEs we need. To be able to get that report directly out of your CMMS would be amazing, right? So David, what are we gonna see in 2035?
What do we think? So does anyone know what quantum computing is? Have you heard of quantum computing? So I watched, I'm not a computer expert, but I watched, I think it was CBS Sunday Morning talking about, or maybe it was 60 Minutes, I don't remember, but a quantum computer, so a current computer, if you have a maze, you have like point A to point B, it'll go through the maze one way, then it'll go through the maze the next way, so on. A regular computer. Quantum does all the routes at one time. So it's much faster, and they equated it to like flipping a coin, and there's like heads or tails, but quantum is everything in between when it's flipping everywhere. It's all of that. So it's much faster. My son works in cyber in the Navy, and I was talking to him a little bit. They're already working on advanced passwords, so on, for quantum. So that could speed up a lot of stuff that we do. Higher levels of integration. Well, we already know we have possibility just by raising of hands how many things are not integrated now, so we can do that now, but we think hopefully it'll be even more in the future. Preventive maintenance replaced with predictive maintenance, and maybe not even maintenance at all, because there's equipment out that it's less and less maintenance needed on it. Neurolinks and nanotechnology. This is kind of maybe going out on a limb a little bit, but just think if, like you could download Al's brain into your brain from Neuralink and have all the knowledge he has, and then you could build from there, and then the next person kind of same thing. Or if you could populate work orders just by doing your Neuralink, and instead of having to type out whatever it is, you could have, it's the possibilities are kind of endless.
David, you just scared the hell out of everybody in this room, let me tell you.
Downloading your brain. We don't want some of the stuff, just a little bit of it.
No, we talked in your session, Ben, about where AI exists today, and again, one example that you cited was the difference between a seasoned radiologist versus a relatively new radiologist, and with AI enhancement of the information process, that they could get to the same level of accuracy. And I think the same will exist with AI in our CMMSs, right, where technicians can ask the system questions and get direction. And I want to be careful there to say get direction, not give answers, right? Even back when I was a department manager, and my team was talking about building out a problem solution database. That's all well and good, but the thing you want to be very, very cautious of is that techs don't go to that first and oh, if this is the failure, then this is what the likely solution is. I'm just going to order that board and replace it. You still have to go through your regular troubleshooting routine, right? But I think that will be a much more prevalent thing. The chat CBT that a lot of people access now, having the ability to ask your CMMS questions and get guidance of things to look at, it, I think is something that's coming.
And then I thought nanotechnology is kind of like maybe the ability for equipment to repair itself to some degree. So next.
Okay.
A lot more stuff here.
Yeah, go ahead.
AI predictive maintenance. So what Al was talking about, like going back and checking your stuff, you could do that more with AI. And then it could maybe create a dashboard for you. Here's stuff that AI thinks that you should look at, and then you review it yourself to get like the best answer for your predictive maintenance or AEM. Notification of equipment availability. Ben kind of talked about it a little bit, and we said it tying it with the ADT and RTLS. And then the other, like one more step from that is in your database, who's it assigned to? It automatically sending me, oh, Dave, like you got room 526 open and this PMs are in there. Do you want to accept it or decline it? And I can decline it maybe and do it next time it opens. I can get up there. Or I'm like, oh, I haven't been able to get in there and forever. It automatically, it assigns it to me, and it knows it's already assigned to me. So it notifies me when that room is available automatically to be able to do the PM, because I was talking to Alan, I said, I keep doing rounds in this ICU and all the rooms are full, you know, and I keep doing it, and I go back again and the same thing. Then I go back and, oh, now it's a different patient in there. I missed the opportunity when it was open. But that kind of thing, that might even be in the near future, huh, Alan, more than 2035. Problem solution database notification, kind of just like inventory of what stuff has gone wrong with this equipment before. Accurate and effective equipment location, utilization tracking, kind of what I just talked about. If you want to see, there's a person displaying in this MD Expo. It's called Fresenius Cabby. It's a new infusion pump, but I feel like that's kind of the future of medical equipment. If you haven't been by there to see them, they're kind of on the left-hand side when you walk in the door on the far left. But they have a smart battery. The battery tells you when it needs to be replaced. It has RTLS. It built into the pump. It can tell you where the pump is, if it's in use or not in use. It can do line by line drug library. And it also has, every time it's turned on and before every use, it does a self-calibration. So no PMs are required. So you think of how much time you spend on infusion pumps. Yeah. Oh, you're from Fresenius. I'm not advertising for you. I'm not advertising for anybody. But yeah, I mean, it's, you have another. Yeah. I feel like it's the next generation. And I think there's going to be, I mean, you're maybe the first, but there's going to be, like, everybody that has a good idea, people copy off of it. So I think it's going to just be like kind of snowballing more in the future. And it might even be before 2035. Remote diagnostics, which we have some of that now, but I think it will just be higher level. Remote experts or AI support, tech support. So you might not even have to call, you know, Phillips and wait on hold and go through the whole call tree thing and all that kind of whatever, whoever you call for tech support. It'd be more like right available right where you are. And screenless PCs, which exist today. And I think holographic images, like for troubleshooting, it would be really good, or maybe even parts ordering, holographic images. So you could have like a 3D model and you could turn it, twist it, whatever, however you want to do it, kind of like the Oculus glasses, but this is holographic. And you could point out the part on the 3D piece that you need to order, and the CMMS can just order it for you. Or it can help you with troubleshooting too, by looking at this tech database along with the holographic images. But the screenless PC exists today, but I don't think we're going to have PCs in the future. I think it's going to be right here on my phone or right here in my pocket. No, no more computers. And it'll just be like you can do your job as you go. I mean, it kind of exists today, I think, right, Al? But more and more, and maybe, you know, how things keep getting smaller, so the phones will be able to do more and more from just the flip phone that we, in our lifetime, we've had, you know, from flip phone that could take a picture, you know, and now we do videos, all the stuff that we can do on our smartphones now, and that's all in our lifetime. Even looking around here, there's people that aren't that young that, I mean, you probably had it more of your life than I've had it, but it's existed the whole time. So that's it. I always I want to say it's my honor to present with Al, and thanks a lot for Al for helping me out. And Al did most of these slides, and I kind of just tagged along. I thought I was really smart when I sent him all that stuff, and found out that I really wasn't as smart as I thought. And I mean, maybe the integration part is like some opportunities for everybody in here. There's several vendors in the show, but you can go by and see Al at Phoenix Data Systems, and they can give you a walk through their system, what it's capable of. But there's other, I don't want to just advertise for them, but I'm kind of an uninterested party where Al works for a CMMS vendor.
I would suggest that whatever CMMS you're using, and again, as we were going through these integrations and automations, and there were many hands that went up. So
yeah.
I would suggest
there's a lot of opportunities there.
Right. I would suggest that you look at those opportunities with what exists today, and you can really increase your efficiency. Yes, sir.
No.
We all like agree that these are really good ideas, and I can't justify or go and ask my family to buy the 10 integrations that I'm missing. Neither can I make 100% usage of the integrations I have. So I'd be interested to ask more about what you think the barriers are to making the human interface to all of these information better so we can actually use it. So my RTLS has an ETL, my CMMS has RTLS. But my technicians, even though they're possibly capable of looking for which room is open and where is BMET, they never do because the interface to that is awful.
Well, that's kind of like the automatic notification I was talking about. Yeah.
Sure.
All of these are boutique projects.
Does it cost for each integration? I'm not
There is,
into this,
yeah.
so I don't know. Oh, okay.
There is, and I think in answer to your question, what it comes down to is the quality of those integrations, right? I mentioned earlier that I was never a fan of automated test devices because I just didn't think that the cost was warranted, right? But I would happily sit down today, again, with the numbers of the percent time that would be saved and make that business case, right? The same exists here. You have to make sure, and again, going back to those slides where I showed the process flows and the workflows of information, where it begins, where it has to go to, and what has to come back. You'd better spend some time with your CMMS vendor mapping those things out and making sure that you're getting that information conveyed in a way that actually helps your technicians. Because if it doesn't, you just wasted a bunch of money.
I think there's one more slide with our contact info. If you want to get a hold of us.
Question, yes.